One of the biggest areas of uniqueness is the hierarchy of values expressed in the hierarchy of choices that we make. And the first thing to understand is that everything is in a hierarchical position, and that becomes illuminated in different moments. And it's also important to understand that it's that we value both parts. And one example I like to use around this is everyone values pleasure and everyone values truthfulness. If you go on a road trip, and you can have the option of a map that actually takes you where you want to go, or you have a map that's not true, that's just made up. Everyone who wants to arrive will pick the accurate map. And words are just an accurate map for reality. If I say I'm a black woman, it's not as useful as saying I'm a white man, because it doesn't create an accurate map of reality. So if we understand that we all value, every value, we all value pleasure, we all value truth, we all value honor, but to different degrees in different situations, then a big area of our uniqueness is the different choices that we would make in different orders of priority. And so I thought I'd run down a few of examples of this to kind of illustrate the area of uniqueness. So one of the questions is, would you rather be in a free country with miserable people, or a more dictatorial, a more prescribed country with happy people? And I would say the latter, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One of the reasons is that there is a continuum between freedom and structure, and too much choice and too much freedom actually statistically creates misery. Being asked, would you like to pay paper paper or plastic, a credit card or cash? Do you want to donate money for that bag, or do you want to get a credit for the bag? That alone is enough to create misery. But when you add in 5 other choices, would you like a clear plastic bag or an opaque plastic bag? Would you like to donate to any of these 50 charities? And let me just list them all. The more choice, the more freedom, it becomes increasingly irritating. And they've actually shown that the more, and it's particularly true with lovers, but even if buying something, if you have the option to continually exchange it for something else, there's this sense you can never enjoy because it could be something a little better. And so the more freedom that we induce, into a scenario, the more miserable we become statistically, while as a culture we devote ourselves to the ideal of freedom while being burdened by it. And so obviously everything is a continuum as well. I mean, we do not yet require a permit to breathe, despite the ever growing expansion of bureaucracy. We do not yet require a permit to breathe, but we could, and so yet 500 years ago in the United States, nobody was homeless because Native Americans all built themselves little teepees and fires to keep warm, and hunted the lands, etc. So There was no building permit. There was no one that said, go live under a bridge because we will not let you build a house unless it costs, $600,000 to meet all the codes. Oh, you can't come up with that amount of money, go live under a bridge. No, there was no permits required. And so we have a lot less freedom today, and mixed results. I mean, how many depressed Indians were there or Native Americans were there? How many suicidal Native Americans were there? How many obese? So there's certainly trade-offs. But overall, I would pick the data on well-being over the dogma of freedom. Particularly given my irritation that after going to the same grocery store for 10 years, they can't even have a default setting. They keep asking the same boring retinue of questions. Another important thing: would you like to be normal or would you like to be happy? And one of the reasons we like to be normal is we want to survive. And, Abraham Maslow, iterates illustrates the hierarchy of human needs, so survival, security, love, and belonging. And love and belonging usually demands normalcy. Imitation creates empathy and bonding. Which is why children that copy their parents are significantly more loved and accepted within their culture and within the family than children that decide, I'm not going to learn English, I'm going to learn Japanese, and I'm not going to be able to talk to you. I'm not going to wear Western clothes. I'm going to cover my body with interesting grasses. I'm not going to cut my hair that way. I'm going to do it this way. I'm not going to go to school. So when we dissociate from the norm, whichever it is, there is a sense like, okay, you don't want to be one of us. One of us, this clique. And if you're not one of us, we're not going to protect you. We're not going to treat you as one of us. We're not going to basically help you live. And so when survival is on the line, when survival and security is on the line, it is necessary to conform to a certain degree in order to survive. But I'm talking about once you have survival security handled, would you rather be normal or would you rather be happy? And here I would go with happiness. And I think that it's remarkable how dictatorial the unspoken taboos and laws of our cults are, our cultures, that preclude all kinds of easy happiness, all kinds of easy joy, in order to be normal. If given the choice to pass a new law to curb environmental damage, to stop a company putting toxins into the water, or to create a more healthy and robust economy, would I go with the environment or the economy? In other words, controlling people to behave better in the environment or boosting the economy. In specific situations, it would vary, but as a general rule, secure and abundant people who are treated well will take better care of their environment because it's theirs and they're worth it. If you're treated well and you feel that you're worth it, then you want a nice environment. Well, then you don't put poison in it. So in that area, I would rather focus on the well-being and care of people, economically being one of those areas, than to put constraints on the environment, because a healthy and abundant people does not go out of its way to harm the environment. But if you have an unnourished and poor people, particularly a traumatized people that's troubling to survive, whether you have the law or not, they're going to do what they need to survive, including damaging the environment and their own bodies. Similarly, if dealing with a traumatized culture, and we are a traumatized culture if you look at the data, if dealing with a traumatized culture, would I focus on bringing more love into the culture, or would I focus on healing trauma? And I would definitely focus on healing and educating people on trauma, because you cannot love while you're in a traumatic state. You cannot feel love when you're in a traumatic state, and so that's a a logistical issue. You have a relationship or a country, and there's a certain amount of pain in the culture, in the country, in the family, in the relationship. And there's a certain amount of pleasure in a marriage, in a family, in a culture or relationship. If I have the choice to add 1 unit of pleasure or decrease 1 unit of pain, which one will I choose? And I would choose decreasing pain. The reason being that the brain amplifies pain by a 500% margin. And what I mean by that is you have 6 people. You're talking with 6 people, and one of them is threatening in some way, and the other 5 are not. What gets all the attention? The one threat. So you have 5 very nice, lovely people, and you have one in the 6 that's being threatening. And they get all the attention, meaning the brain prioritizes threat, pain, negativity over positivity. So if you have the choice, reduce pain right before you then look at boosting pleasure. I mean, there's nothing stopping you doing both, but you'll get 500% margin of leverage if you reduce a unit of pain relative to adding a unit of pleasure. If I was teaching a child intelligently, and I had to choose between teaching the child emotional literacy, the science and art of emotions and their role in life and relationships, or the science and role of mathematics and their role in life, I would pick an emotionally illiterate person. There's a number of reasons for that. First of all, we have calculators. Secondly, if you have good relationship skills, you can find someone easily who's good at math. But if you're good at math, it doesn't mean you can have any kind of a relationship to find someone who's, great at filling in the gaps of your relationships. Secondly, we're in a culture where most people are emotionally illiterate, meaning the typical person doesn't even know the difference between a feeling and an emotion. And you can just test that out by asking if you know the difference between a feeling and an emotion. Well, I learned it a year ago. Well, if you can go through an entire culture without a single person explaining or even feeling it's important to explain the difference between a feeling and an emotion, at the same time when every single action in human history is motivated with emotions, meaning if you take out the entire emotional center, you have no fear, which means you have no pain also. So you have no fear, you have no pain, you have no pleasure, no joy, no excitement, no enthusiasm, no guilt, nothing. You take the entire emotional body offline and nobody does anything. And so, there's nothing to get you out of bed. And so every action in human history has been emotionally based, but using an unconscious technology. In time, if you could choose to spend more hours in overtime at the job, or work half part-time and spend more time building constructive relationships, would I focus on work more or build relationships? And I would build relationships. And the reason is obvious. The data on happiness and well-being says that the quality of human relationships after survival needs are met is much higher. But there's also the fact that, like, I live in an $800,000 house, and the truth is that having 5 great relationship partners, good friends, male and female friends, that are really great people to spend time with, and living in a little hut that costs $10,000 would be a much more rich life. And shifting away from work, which particularly in the United States is, a dissatisfying experience for 70-80% of Americans, to, working less, making less money, reducing life expenses, investing that in relationships and in hobbies and passions. Statistically is better for the environment, it's better for human health, it's better for the culture. In the choice between getting more sleep, more healthy, sleeping better, and getting more overtime. So an hour less sleep and an extra hour of overtime, and all the money that delivers, or sleep, I would pick sleep, and the data supports that when people get an extra hour of sleep, they're significantly happier than having the overtime and feeling sleep deprived. Honesty and pleasure. Would I pick honesty and less pleasure over more pleasure and less honesty? And I would pick honesty over more pleasure. And I'm specifically thinking sexually in, everyone who has affairs, sexual affairs, is choosing pleasure over honesty. And there's just no need for that. And because pain hurts more than pleasure, the betrayal of people who feel betrayed ripples out into less enthusiasm, less interest in quality relationships. So I feel very strongly about that, and have never betrayed a partner as a result. Would I prioritize a good ending over sustaining a poor or mediocre relationship? And it partly depends, meaning in general, having no relationships is the most destructive. In general, a mediocre relationship is better than no relationship. However, with 7 billion people on the planet, there's no need for no relationship or a mediocre relationship. And so I would prioritize a good ending and prioritize working my ass off to get back into a great relationship. In growing up, which do you tackle first? Developing a romantic relationship or building life skills? Well, I think in our culture, my choice is to build life skills first, to develop financial, and environmental skills, so that there's a container to safely build relationship skills, particularly understanding that in present culture, we're dealing largely with emotionally illiterate people. And so it's going to take real skill to cultivate and grow relationship. Would I like to focus, and would I put my emphasis in dealing with crime on creating healthier relationships with ourselves through meditation, awareness, and empathy building, or more focus on the police and prisons? And I know for myself that when I'm safe and I'm included and I feel welcome, I enjoy giving and sharing and caring about people. Which leads me to conclude that the people who are committing violent and harming crimes are people who do not feel empathically connected, belonging, and safe within the community. And so if someone doesn't feel connected and safe and able to survive and welcome in the community, they will find a way to commit a crime one way or another, and you're just going to fill up prisons indefinitely. And so, I would definitely put about 75% of the resources into culture building consciously. And part of that is reducing the scale of interactions so that you have really close interactions with maybe 150 people regularly, so that you have real emotional connection as opposed to just existing in a sea of strangers. And finally, in the crisis of homelessness, would I prefer to give, if necessary, free housing to homeless people, or pay the many costs in crime, forest fires, and disease and policing that comes from creating, an environment of high housing costs, and making it illegal to build truly low-cost housing. So these are some of the trade-offs in different choice points, and I'd be interested in some of yours.